Okay, so we're cutting these notches in up in the forward section of the boat, and here we can really start to see how that angle changes as those topside battens come in towards the stem. And you'll see that we've got a sort of highlighted difference here between our frames that are square and our topside battens that are coming in. Now this is a really great stage of our build to be able to start fairing out the hull lines and getting things really nice and straight. Although they're curved, we would use the term straight in boat building. And as we cut these notches in, we can start to get these battens to lay really nicely. Now, as we come forward, we're going to have an increased bevel as the batten comes through the frame, and we can actually start to fair that out right when we cut these notches. So you can see that I'm just lining my saw up here with the mark that I've cut. I'm just using my finger to push the saw blade up and down just to lie on that mark. And then once I've got that where I'm happy with it, I can make a little start of the cut. But then what I can do here is I can sight down against my chine clamp, and I can get my saw started in the correct angle. So you see that I want this topside batten to follow the same angle as the chine, and you can see that if I move this around, I've got a gap at the forward or the aft end of the saw. So I want to get that saw blade, I want to be looking down on top of it and get that nice and parallel to the line of the chine, and then that's going to be a pretty good indication that I'm going to be setting this batten in to the right angle. It's certainly going to get me close anyway. So I'll make a cut at that. And of course I'm also trying to keep the saw in the correct plane in this direction, and I'm doing that by sighting in from the side here and keeping that parallel to my my chine log as well. So I'm making a number of cuts. At the moment I'm just approximating the depth that I want to go with these, and then I'll drop that topside batten in, make an adjustment, and then slowly dial it in until I'm at the correct depth. So then I'm going to knock the bulk of the material out. I'm coming into that frame from either side because I don't want to blow out the plywood on the back of this gusset or on the face of this bulkhead here. Okay, so when I've got some of that material removed, I can just drop that topside batten in, and then I can start to offer that up. And again, what I'm doing is sighting along the top edge of this here, and I want this to be parallel to my chine log and also sunk into the frame to the correct depth. So you can see that this is still high at the moment in comparison to this. We want a nice flush run between the two, and it's still a little bit high on this frame before as well, so we'll also be taking that down a touch, but we'll just do some little adjustments and bring that in a bit at a time. Then with my little shoulder plane I can start to make some adjustments. This is really good just to take off small amounts, and again I want to be careful not to blow out that plywood face from either side. And I would control that by just putting an extra bevel on the forward edge. So I would just start by doing the same thing really. I'm angling my shoulder plane to match my chine log, but to begin with what I'll do is I'll just steepen up that angle and just take a little bite off the forward end of that plywood and the same on the aft end. And that's just going to mean that I can run that shoulder plane right the way through now and not worry about blowing the plywood out on the back face of that. So I'm just going to take a few passes and get that brought down. Okay, it's pretty close. I've got a little bit of height still, touch of difference between the two of those, and a little bit too much on this frame maybe, but the thing is, because I haven't cut this frame yet, this batten is still coming out a little bit, so I'm going to get this one cut in next, and then we'll work along and we'll even all these out as a whole entity. Okay, so I've got that one set in so that I'm happy with it, and I'm just pushing this into place. We want to make sure that it's following the contour of the side framing on each station, and that we're nicely in line with that chine log as well, that chine top rail. And when we're nice and even all the way along, we can get that one glued into place. Okay, so I've got my first topside batten notch cut in, which you can see up here, angling here through frame 4. And then I've got my positions of them marked all the way down throughout the frames for the rest of the topside battens. Now, there's a number of ways that we can come to arrive at the depth for these, and I've thought about this, several different possible routes that we could use for this. Probably my preferential thing would be to do when the topside battens are up against the frames like this as they were, would be to put a marker up against the back side of them and then transpose the back face of them into the frame. So that's going to give us our correct bevel, and it's going to allow us to transfer that depth through into the frame. That was quite a tricky thing to do from the inside of here, working in the model. In the full-size boat, I would climb inside here and I would transfer that line all the way down. The other possibility is that you use something like a trim router, so you can set your depth to the depth of this notch, and then you could just go over this with a trim router and knock back and forth across each frame. That's going to be a really quick method to do this. I think it's certainly going to get the bulk of the material removed and get you close. That's not really a possibility for me at this scale because it's just going to be too big and bulky a tool to do. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to cut all these by hand. Now what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to just use this upper notch and I'm going to transpose that depth down through all of these, because it should follow, despite the fact we've got a different curvature. We're going to have pretty much the same angle through the frame for all of these topside battens. And this is going to be a pretty good indication of where we want to be. So I'm just going to scribe that depth line down through these, and I'm going to cut to that. Now I'm going to do that obviously on both sides of the frames, because the frames certainly forward are going to vary in depth. And I'm going to use that as my marker, so I'll get cutting those out and we'll see how it works. I'm still going to use the same kind of practice as well, just as a secondary gauge for that. I'm going to follow the shear clamp line with my saw so I can angle that correctly through the frame. And I can also do that from the chine clamp, chine log as we come down. So I just did a relief cut there, just an additional cut. You might have noticed on the other cutouts I've done loads of little cuts. That just means that there's less material to chisel out in one block, so it's a little bit less stress on the frame as you're chiseling sections out. Just makes it a bit easier to tackle smaller pieces. Okay, so that worked well actually, following my bevel angle down through all the frames. That worked really nicely, and it's a lot quicker actually just following that down the frame for all of those. So I'm going to roll that out across the rest of the boat, and what I'll do is just the final little adjustments of these with the shoulder plane, and we put the topside battens back in and just check everything for height and fairness. Shite. Okay, so as a look at our topside battens glued into place, you can see that our gapping here, which makes these float above the side frames is based on the aft side of that frame, so the control side of the frame, which is here, and you can see the forward side is notched in further. So what we're going to need to do now is to transfer the bevel from this topside batten through to this, just in the forward frames, because you can see here that we'd actually end up with them sitting up against the side, or even they're a little bit proud actually right up forward in these frames. So we'll just take those back down when we come to install the topside planking, and you can see what that looks like up on frame 1 there. So that gapping that we're looking for from the sides is on the aft side of these frames, and then a similar sort of thing. It gets a lot less noticeable when you come back down aft, but you can see that's on the forward side of the aft frames as the boat turns in this way with its shape. So that's the topside battens placed on this side of the boat. I've also in the past few weeks been doing the shear clamp on the other side and getting things moving along. It's been a little while obviously since I've done the last video, but this has actually been massively time consuming cutting all these in by hand, and this is actually probably more time consuming almost on the model, certainly more difficult on the model, because you're dealing with much finer tolerances and things, and sighting in battens and stuff. I find it a lot easier on a full-size boat versus trying to do it on this model. It's quite tricky, but we're there anyway, so yeah, we're pushing forwards. So now that I've got these installed, the next thing to do will be to just give this a rough fair off. These are pretty fair actually, and I've got them as good as I can sighting down the boat. There's a couple of little kinks and stuff in them, and some of these battens right up forward here where they've got a kind of scallop in to the curvature of the top sides, they're not quite following. They're a little bit too staggered vertically, and they should be kicked over a little bit, so that I'll just be taking the edges off of those slightly just to fair those in. So as I start to fair in some of those topside battens, we'll be able to start placing some of the inner planking layer for the top side, and that's going to be done with 2 layers of planking in the same way that the bottom was done. So we're going to have a diagonal planking layer which will be able to start to spring in like this, and we can just check all of those for fairness as we lay those in, and then we'll have longitudinal planks which are going to run like this down the length of the boat, which will be the finished top side. So that'll be pretty nice to get to that stage. So that's probably what we're going to look at in the next video, and we'll start getting some topside planking on. We'll be shaping the stem as well, so we'll be following the lines of these battens through the stem and using that to shape the top part of the stem bevel. And yeah, we'll start getting some planking on. So hope you enjoyed that video. Sorry it's been a little while since the last one, but we'll try and pick up the pace again and get back onto this going forward. So I will catch you in the next one. Cheers guys.